Saint Seiya, Seinto Seiya, also known as Saint Seiya, Knights of the Zodiac or simply Knights of the Zodiac, is a Japanese manga series written and illustrated by Masami Kurumada and serialized in Weekly Shōnen Jump from 1986 to 1990, and adapted into an anime TV series by Toei Animation from 1986 to 1989. The story follows 5 mystical warriors called the Saints, Seinto, or Knights in some adaptations, who fight wearing sacred armors named cloths, Kurosu, the designs of which derive from the various constellations the characters have adopted as their destined guardian symbols, and empowered by a mystical energy called Cosmo, Kosumo. The Saints have sworn to defend the reincarnation of the Greek goddess Athena in her battle against the other Olympian gods who want to dominate Earth. Saint Seiya began to be known in the West as Knights of the Zodiac after it became successful in France in 1988, where it was given the name of Les Chevaliers du Zodiac. This was also the first foreign release of the series. Both the original manga and the anime adaptation were very successful in Japan and several Asian, European and Latin American countries, including Hong Kong, Singapore, France, Italy, Spain, Mexico, Dominican Republic, Peru, Argentina, Colombia, Ecuador, Chile and Brazil. However, none of them were translated into English until 2003. 4 animated feature films were shown in Japanese theaters from 1987 to 1989. The anime was cancelled and left unfinished in 1989, leaving one arc of the manga non-animated. However, in 2002, Toei Animation continued the anime in the form of 3 OVA series in order to adapt the remaining manga story arcs, and following this revival of the franchise, a 5th film was screened in 2004. A 6th film will premiere in the summer of 2014. Since 2006, author Kurumada has resumed the publishing of the manga, starting from the conclusion of the original work, continuing the story in Saint Seiya, Next Dimension. Plot. The story focuses on an orphan named Seiya who was forced to go to the sanctuary in Greece to obtain the bronze cloth of the Pegasus constellation, a protective armor worn by the Greek goddess Athena's 88 warriors known as saints. Upon awakening the power of the saints, which is an inner spiritual essence, originated in the Big Bang, Seiya quickly becomes the Pegasus saint and returns to Japan to find his older sister. Because his sister disappeared the same day Seiya went to the sanctuary, Sori Kaido, the granddaughter of Mitsumasa Kaido, makes a deal with him to go to fight in a tournament called the Galaxian Wars. In this tournament, all the orphans who survived and became bronze saints must fight to win the most powerful cloth, the Sagittarius gold cloth. If Seiya goes to compete there and wins, Sori would start a search to find Seiya's sister. The tournament is interrupted by the revengeful Phoenix Bronze Saint, Iki, who wishes to eliminate Track from the people who forced him undergo his training. He steals parts from the Sagittarius cloth and eventually fights against the remaining Bronze Saints, Seiya, Shun, Shia, and Hyaga, to complete it. Upon Iki's defeat, the Bronze Saints are attacked by the Silver Saints sent by the Sanctuary's Pope to eliminate them. When they remain victorious, the Bronze Saints learn that Sori is Athena's reincarnation and that the Pope once tried to kill her as a baby. The Sagittarius Gold Saint Iolo saved Sori but was killed shortly afterwards and gave Sori to her adopted grandfather, Mitsumasa Kaido. Deciding to join forces with Sori, the Bronze Saints go to the sanctuary to defeat the Pope, but upon their arrival, Sori is severely wounded by a gold arrow from a Silver Saint. Believing the Pope may be able to heal her, the Bronze Saints go to find him. To do so, they have to go through 12 temples, each one guarded by one gold saint, the most powerful saints of Athena. Following several battles, Seiya gets to the Pope's temple and learns that he is the gold saint Gemini Saga who killed the real Pope to obtain more power. With help from his friends Cosmos, Seiya is able to knock out Saga and use the shield from Athena's statue to heal Sori. Shortly afterwards, Saga commits suicide as a self-punishment. In the manga's second story arc, the Greek god Poseidon reincarnates within the body of Julian Solo who follows his will of flooding the earth. Sori goes to his temple where Julian offers her to reduce the flooding by absorbing the water inside the Apilla. Seiya, Hyaga, Shun and Seiya go to Poseidon's underwater temple and are confronted by his underlings, the Marines. As Seiya, Hyuga, and Seiya make their way to Julian, Aki learns that the mastermind behind this war is Saga's twin, Gemini Cornan, who is manipulating Julian. During the final battle, Poseidon's spirit awakes within Julian and manages to defeat his opponents. Saved by the saints from the pillar, Sori seals Poseidon's soul within her amphora. The third and last arc from the manga follows how Hades, the underworld god, is freed from his seal and revives the deceased gold saints alongside the Pope Ares Shun to the sanctuary to kill Athena. The remaining gold saints serving Athena are able to subdue the enemies, but Sori then commits suicide. This act is instead meant to directly send her to the underworld to face Hades, and the saints follow her. Shun reveals that the revived gold saints' true intentions were of giving Sori her own cloth, and gives it to Seiya's group before dying once again. In the underworld, as saints fight Hades' 108 specters, Shun is possessed by Hades. Sori reaches Hades and expels his soul from Shun's body. Hades then takes Sori to the Elysium, and the 5 bronze saints follow them. In the final fight against Hades and his 2 followers, Hypnos and Thanatos, the saints gain the strongest god cloths and use them to aid Sori in killing Hades. However, Seiya also sacrifices himself by receiving one of Hades' attacks and the saints return to Earth with his body. The story continues in Saint Seiya Next Dimension, after the events of the Hades arc. Production. When Masami Kurumada was in the process of creating Saint Seiya, he gave Seiya the name Rin at first, since Kurumada was going to title his manga Ginga no Rin. However, as Kurumada continued developing his manga, he decided to change the name to Seiya, which was more fitting. First he spelled the name with the kanji that meant holy arrow, to relate it to Seiya's condition as a saint, but later decided to use the kanji that meant star arrow, to emphasize the constellation and mythological motif. Finally, he changed his manga title as well, to Saint Seiya, once he fully developed the concept of the saints. Also, Kurumada stated that one of the first ideas he conceived for Saint Seiya was the Pegasus meteor fist. Since his manga was going to use the constellations as a very important and ever-present theme, he wanted his protagonist to have a special move that would be like a shower of meteors. When Kurumada designed Seiya's likeness, he was inspired by his character Ryuji Takan, the protagonist of his hit manga Ring ni Kakuro, which he created 9 years before Seiya. Most protagonists of Kurumada's works bear a resemblance to Ryuji, as Kurumada subscribes to the revered Osamu Tezuka's star system technique. The same process is done with almost all the other characters from the series. Media, manga. The original Saint Seiya manga was conceived, written and illustrated by Masami Kurumada and was published by Shueisha in the magazine Weekly Shōnen Jump from January 1986 to January 1991 and collected in 28 tankobon volumes. The series has 3 main parts or acts: Sanctuary Act, Poseidon Act, and Hades Act. Volume 13 also contains a separate short story called The Chapter of Nastusja from the Land of Ice. The series is licensed in English in North America by Viz Media under the title Saint Seiya, Knights of the Zodiac. Viz released the first collected volume of the series on January 21, 2004, and as of February 2, 2010 all 28 volumes have been released. In addition to the original tankobon volumes listed below, the series has been reissued 4 times. The first reissue was the 15 Azaban volumes in 1995, the collector's version. The second reissue was in 2001 of the Bunkoban, the library version. The series was released again in 2003 in 19 volumes with art design images from the anime adaptation, and called the remix version. The fourth reissue, in 22 volumes and called the complete version, contains additional colored pages as well as colored armor schematics. Another remix version was published at the end of 2007 to coincide with the broadcast of Chapter Elysian of the anime. Another remix version was published at the end of 2012. Other series. During 2002, a new manga called Saint Seiya Episode G started being serialized. The story is situated 7 years before the events at the beginning of the original Saint Seiya manga, and 6 years after the death of the Gold Saint Sagittarius Aiolos, making Leo earlier the main character. During the series, Titans are brought back to life with the mission of recovering their realm, and the Gold Saints are assigned to stop them to protect the humans. This new manga series is written and drawn by Megumi Okada, under the authorization of Masami Kurumada. The individual chapters were published in Akita Shouten's Champion Red and they have been compiled into a total of 20 tankobon. In the summer of 2006, Kurumada resumed the story of Saint Seiya in Saint Seiya, Next Dimension. Sequel of the Saint Seiya manga, the story continues with the previous holy war between the deities in the Saint Seiya universe. Heroes from the present journey back in time to save Pegasus Seiya from his imminent death. It is being published in Akita Shouten's Shonen Champion magazine at irregular dates, with 8 compiled tankobon volumes released so far. Also, during the fall of 2006, another new manga series called Saint Seiya, The Lost Canvas started being published. This series tells an alternate interpretation of the previous holy war that took place in the 18th century, 250 years before the original series in the Saint Seiya universe. The story centers on the relations between Tenma, the Pegasus Saint, and his beloved friend, Alone, who would eventually become his greatest enemy, Hades. Along with Saint Seiya, Next Dimension, it was published in Akita Shouten's Shonen Champion magazine. The chapters have been compiled into 25 tankobon. Saint Seiya, The Lost Canvas is written and illustrated by Shiori Teshiragi, under the authorization of Kurumada. A new anime series was announced by Toei Animation, under the name Saint Seiya Omega, which began airing on April 1, 2012 with a grand total of 97 episodes. As an anime original story, it does not take place in the continuity of Kurumada's manga. In most English-speaking countries, both the OVA series Saint Seiya, The Lost Canvas and the anime series Saint Seiya Omega are available in English subtitled format through Crunchyroll. In June 2013, a third Saint Seiya spin-off manga series was announced. Titled Saint Seiya, Seinto Seiya, it began serialization in the September 2013 issue of Champion Red magazine. The series features a female saint named Sha as the protagonist and is authored by Kamaki Kuori, under commission by Masami Kurumada. Anime. The anime adaptation is based on the manga of the same title and follows it closely. Produced by Toei Animation, it first premiered on Japan's TV Asahi on October 11, 1986, lasting from 1986 to 1989. It was directed first by Kazama Rishita and then by Kazuto Kikuchi. The animation character designers and aestheticists were Shingo Araki and Miki Himeno, and Seiji Yokoyama composed the soundtracks. Adapting Kurumada's storylines from the manga, the chief script writers were Takao Koyama and Yoshiyuki Suga. The series has 3 main parts: Sanctuary, Asgard, which exists only in the anime adaptation, and Poseidon. In North America, the series premiered on Cartoon Network on August 30, 2003, but only the first 32 episodes aired. This dub, retitled Knights of the Zodiac, was licensed by DIC Entertainment. This dub was heavily edited. The edits included cutting overly violent scenes, adding in previously non-existent digital transitions, coloring all instances of blood blue and renaming it Mystical Energies, rewriting the scripts, and replacing the opening theme, ending theme, and background music. ADV Films licensed the home video rights to the series and released the DIC dubbed episodes. In addition to this, ADV also released the original, uncut Japanese version of the show with English subtitles, featuring a new, uncut dub. The first 60 episodes were released in this way. In early 2009, the uncut version was reissued in 2 box sets, and ADV had expressed an interest in releasing the rest of the series uncut and completing their uncut dub. However, ADV shut down and ceased operations later that year. A DVD set entitled Saint Seiya, Sanctuary Classic Complete Collection was released to DVD in the US on April 15, 2014 by New Video, containing the first 73 episodes in Japanese with English subtitles. On June 20, 2014 and September 2, 2014 two Blu-ray boxes were released, containing all 114 episodes of the classic series, restored in high-definition video and audio along with extra materials. Novel. On November 9, 1988, Shōnen Jump released a Jump Gold Selection Anime Special 2, written by Takao Koyama, with illustrations by the series animation character designers Shingo Araki and Miki Himeno. This special is just a detailed flashback to Gemini Saga's assassination attempt on the newborn Athena. There is also a series of 2 novels written by Kurumada and Tatsuya Hamazaki with the name of Saint Seiya a Eurogig and Tormakia, which were published by Jump J Books. The first novel was released in Japan on August 23, 2002, while the second was released on December 16, 2002. Original video animations. These are a series of original video animations that cover the last arc of the manga, which was not previously adapted into anime. The first 13 episodes were broadcast on an IMAX from November 9, 2002 to April 12, 2003, and then released on DVD during the year 2003. These 13 episodes were named Hades a Euro Chapter Sanctuary and adapt volumes 19 to 22 from the manga. This OVA series was directed by Shigeyasu Yamauchi, still with animation character designs by Shingo Araki and Miki Himeno, while the scripts were adapted from the manga this time by Michiko Yokot, and the soundtrack was entirely taken from Yokoyama's work on the previous TV series. 2 years after the first part of the Hades saga, Chapter Sanctuary, a second part was produced in 2005. This second chapter was named Hades a Euro Chapter Inferno and consists of 6 episodes, adapting volumes 23 to 25 from the manga. However, most of the original voice actors did not reprise their roles. Hideyuki Tanaka, however, reprises his role as the narrator. Hirotaka Shotsuki, the original voice actor of Dragon Chia, died on August 6, 2006 due to lung cancer. On the same IMAX channel, Toei Animation released the first 2 OVAs on December 17, 2005, followed by the next 2 on January 21, 2006. The last pair were released on February 18, 2006. Shortly after their TV broadcasting, which lasted for 2 months, the episodes were released on DVD in 2006. This short OVA series was directed by Tomoharu Katsumata, but the other staff remained the same. Toei Animation officially announced the news on its website on July 18, 2006. Then, Hades a Euro Chapter Inferno, Part 2, which contains 6 episodes in total, was released, adapting volumes 25 to 26 from the manga. As of June 28, Masami Kurumada announced on his personal blog that production on the Hades a Euro Chapter Elysian OVAs had begun. It was thought that the release was to be in mid-December 2007, as of the last 2 years with the performance of the 2 Inferno chapters, but no preview or released images were available as of the end of October. In November 2007, Toei Animation announced that the official release of the Elysian chapter would be in March 2008 and not December 2007 as originally planned. The Elysian OVAs were released in March, May, and August, and adapted the final 2 volumes from the manga, 27 and 28. Films. In 2003, the French magazine Animal Land published an interview with Masami Kurumada where the author revealed that a company in Hollywood had approached him some years prior with a 15-minute pilot of a live-action movie of Saint Seiya. The project was abandoned as Kurumada did not feel the essence of Saint Seiya had been preserved. In a later interview published in 2005, the reporter was allowed to see the video and commented on how the names of the main characters were changed and noted that one of them, Andromeda Shun, had been changed from male to female. A 5th animated film came out in Japanese theaters in 2004, Heaven Chapter, Overture, which was supposed to follow the regular chronology right after the end of the manga as a prologue to a new chapter. Toei Animation first announced that this new chapter would be a new animated series, but later Kurumada stated that he wanted the film to be part of a trilogy. Taru Furuya revealed Kurumada's wishes for the series during a press conference. After Pegasus Seiya eventually defeats Zeus, he is to go on and face Kronos, the god of time. Toru was not allowed to say anything more. With the serialization of Saint Seiya, Next Dimension, Kurumada removed Overture from the canon of the Saint Seiya universe, although some elements that appeared in it remain in the continuity. A new Saint Seiya movie made in CGI is produced by Toei to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the franchise. It was released on June 21, 2014. Despite the first movie being released in 1987, none of the movies received an official English release in North America until it was announced by Discography in 2012 that they had acquired the home video rights to the first 4 movies and intended to release them across 2 DVDs, each containing 2 movies. No English dub was produced for any of the movies for this release. The DVDs contained only Japanese audio with English subtitles. Musicals. In August 1991, a musical, sponsored by Bandai, was performed at the Aoyama Theatre in Tokyo, Japan. The story retells the Sanctuary and Poseidon chapters. The cast included members of SMAP as the 5 Bronze Saints and Poseidon. The characters Ares Mu, Leo Earlier, and Scorpio Malo were portrayed by members of another band, Tokyo. As of May 2011, Masami Kurumada announced in his website that a new Saint Seiya musical was in the works. Debuting in late 2011, the stage play was titled Saint Seiya Super Musical, and presented a live-action adaptation of the first Saint Seiya film, Evil Goddess Eris. Video games. Several video games have been released based on the series. For the family computer, 2 role-playing games named Saint Seiya, Oegon Densetsu and Saint Seiya, Oegon Densetsu Kanketsu Hen, were released in 1987 and 1988, respectively. For the Game Boy, 1 role-playing game named Seiichi's Saint Paradise, Sakyu no Senshitachi, was released in 1992. Bandai released a typing game called Saint Seiya, Typing Ryu Seiken for the PC in 2003. In 2003, Bandai also released another role-playing game called Saint Seiya, Oegon Densetsu Han Perfect Edition for the Wonders Swan Color, adapting the first 73 episodes. In 2005, Bandai released Saint Seiya, The Sanctuary for the PlayStation 2, a 3D fighting game that adapts the same episodes as the previous game. A sequel for this game was released in 2006 with the name of Saint Seiya, The Hades, adapting the original video animation series. Unlike previous games, these 2 PS2 games were released outside Japan, the later being released first in Europe in 2006 and later in Japan and Australia. A new game called Saint Seiya Online was to be released in August 2009 from Sega Japan and Perfect World Beijing, but the release was delayed. Open beta testing of the game began on the 16th of May, 2013, but only in China. Saint Seiya Online features a 65-piece orchestral music score composed by Masami Amano and performed by the Angel City Studio Orchestra. Recording took place at the Eastwood Scoring Stage at Warner Bros. Studios. The game was first shown to be in production back in 2006 on the 14th of July on Masami Kurumada's blog, but it wasn't until 2008 on the 7th of November that he showed more info about the game on his blog, including a picture from the game with the 5 main Bronze Saints in their original colors. In 2011, a Saint Seiya-themed pachinko game machine was released to commemorate the series' 25th anniversary, featuring both the 5 main Bronze Saints and the 12 Gold Saints as characters. Additionally, a PlayStation 3 game was released in November 2011 titled Saint Seiya Senki, also known in Europe as Saint Seiya, Sanctuary Battle. More recently, a video game for PlayStation 3 has been announced and released on October 17, 2013. The game is titled Saint Seiya, Brave Soldiers, and for the first time, the gameplay covers all 3 major acts in Kurumada's original manga, the 12 Temples arc, the Poseidon arc and the Hades arc. Games featuring characters from Saint Seiya, Famicom Jump, Iraya Ratsuden, Pop-Up Music Animation Melody, Pop-Up Music Anime 02, Saint Seiya Typing Ryu Seiken, Jump. Ultimate Stars, J-Stars Victory vs. Namco. Bandai has announced the release of a smartphone app, offering slot machine and pachinko gameplay. The app is titled Saint Seiya Cosmo Slottle. The events in the game cover the Galaxian Wars arc and the 12 Temples arc as interpreted by the anime adaptation. Additionally, a new game for Yahoo's mobile phone game portal has been announced for a spring 2014 release. The game is titled Saint Seiya, Big Bang Cosmo and will offer trading card-style gameplay. Also, a new Saint Seiya-themed pachinko machine was released in March 2014. Titled Saint Seiya, Golden Fierce Battle Chapter, the gameplay is based in the events of the 12 Temples arc. Discography: Seiji Yokoyama's work as composer of the musical score for Saint Seiya is prolific and has been released in numerous compact disc compilations. Some of them are listed: Saint Seiya Original Soundtrack Year Euro 8, Saint Seiya Euro 1996 Song Collection, Saint Seiya Euro 1997 Shonenki, Saint Seiya Euro Best Collection, Saint Seiya Euro Chikya GI, Saint Seiya Euro Galaxian Wars, Saint Seiya Euro Memorial Box, Saint Seiya Euro Gold Collection, Saint Seiya Euro Hits, Saint Seiya Euro King of the Underworld, Saint Seiya Euro Piano Fantasia, Saint Seiya Euro Tenkaihen Josa Overture, Merchandise. Saint Seiya began to be known in the West as Knights of the Zodiac after it became successful in France at the end of the 1980s, where it was given the name of Les Chevaliers du Zodiac. This was also the very first release of the series outside Asia, in 1988. The series was also broadcast starting from 1989 in Italy, under the title of I Cavalieri dello Zodiaco. This edition is known to differ substantially from other foreign editions of Saint Seiya, not only because many names of characters, places, and fighting techniques were changed, but also because the whole tone of the dialogues was modified to become more aulic and ceremonious, with occasional quotations from various pieces of poetry and classical literature. The main characters were also given adult voices in the dubbing, instead of teenage voices. The series was also released in Spanish-speaking countries, under the title of Los Caballeros del Zodiaco, enjoying great success in both Spain and Latin America. In 2003, the 3 acts of the original anime were aired again on Cartoon Network's Toonami programming block. Starting in 2006, the Hades arc was also aired, with new dubbing. In the mid-1980s a line of Saint Seiya action figures, called Saint Cloth series, were produced by Bandai, featuring most of the series' characters. The toy line was a huge success inside of Japan, but also in other countries such as Hong Kong, Taiwan, France, Belgium, Switzerland, Spain, Portugal, Brazil, Chile, Paraguay and Mexico. The figures have now acquired collector status and the Japanese originals are highly sought after. Some, like Odin's God Robe or Kraken Isaac, have a very high value. Starting in 2002, for their popular Gashapon high-quality PVC figurines line, Bandai released several Saint Seiya-themed sets, each one containing an average of 5 figurines. 7 sets were released, the 6th of which was a special release that included the 12 Gold Saints. The 7th set was released in 2004 to commemorate the release of the Tenkaihen Josa Overture movie, raising the number of figurines released to date to 34. In 2003, Bandai created a new line of figures called Saint Seiya Cloth Myth. Originally, only the 5 main bronze saints wearing their cloths from the Poseidon arcade would be released, in commemoration of the Hades arc of the manga being animated, but were so well received that they decided to continue the line and it continues to sell very well internationally. As of July 2010, there are over 100 figures available, and Bandai continues to release new figures regularly. The line seems to be nowhere near its end. In 2006, Bandai created a separate Gashapon line named Saint Seiya, Cloth Up Saint. It differed from the original Gashapon line in that the figurines were poseable and their armor could be removed. 5 sets, each containing 5 figurines, were released. In 2008, Bandai released a line of PVC figurines Saint Seiya, Saint Statue. Each set includes an average of 5 figures, and 4 sets have been released to date. More recently, the Japanese hobby figurine and collectible manufacturer Mega House released in 2007 a line of very high-quality, non-postable resin figures named Saint Seiya Excellent Model, which are part of the line Excellent Model, composed of various well-known characters from manga and anime. 3 figures have been released so far: Pegasus Seiya, Dragon Seiya, and Athena. Starting in 2008, the Japanese collectible manufacturer Medicos Entertainment is releasing the Saint Seiya cloth collection, a line that consists of various resin figurines of the cloths worn by the saints. 3 volumes have been released so far, each one containing 6 figures. Continuing with its Saint Seiya-themed lines, Medicos Entertainment also released a line of non-postable resin figures named Saint Seiya, Zodiac Temples Chapter, composed of various figures of Saint Seiya characters. 9 figures have been released so far. Medicos also released a very high-quality resin figure of Aeolus and Seiya, wearing the Sagittarius gold cloth, as part of their art collection line. All 3 sub-lines form part of their Kazaa line. Recently, Mega House has announced the release of 2 sets of chibi PVC figures portraying the Gold Saints, titled Saint Seiya, the Ark of the Zodiac Temples. Both sets include 7 figures. Set 1 is slated for release in July 2012 and Set 2 is slated for release in September 2012. Reception: the original manga series of 28 volumes have sold over 25 million copies in Japan as of 2007, and over 34 million copies in Japan as of 2013. When TV Asahi, a television network in Japan, conducted a nationwide survey for the 100 most popular animated television series, Saint Seiya anime came in 25th place. Animage also ranked the anime series within top 100 anime productions. The anime series won the Animage Anime Grand Prix prize in 1987. It was considered one of the biggest anime phenomenons of the 1980s. It would become the inspiration for future series, including Kurumada's later work BTX, Legend of Heavenly Sphere Shirato, Ronin Warriors, Gulkivan, and Mobile Suit Gundam Wing. In the Anime Encyclopedia, a guide to Japanese animation since 1917, Jonathan Clements and Helen McCarthy praises the series' complex plot and felt that animation designers Shingo Arakai and Miki Himeno had worked magic with both the anime series and the films. They also praised the grand soundtrack and director Shigeyasu Yamauchi's ability to stretch out the tension and chose the perfect places to stop an episode to keep audiences waiting for the next one. Clements and McCarthy did, however, find the series disturbing in that its main emotional impact comes from the audience seeing older boys and men fighting brave but naive teenagers, and through victories earning more weapons. Jason Thompson describes the series as being almost pure battle. Yo Da Jinchi based on Saint Seiya popularized the term Yo in 1987. Saint Seiya was particularly popular as a subject in Yo as it had a large cast which was predominantly male. This allowed an incredible number of pairings, although Andromeda Shun was one of the more popular characters to create Yo for. Tite Kubo, the author of the manga series Bleach, considers Saint Seiya to be one of his biggest inspirations for the designs of the different types of weapons that his characters use in the story as well as the battle scenes. References. External links. Saint Seiya website, 25th anniversary movie website, official Toei Animation Saint Seiya anime website, official Toei Animation Saint Seiya OVA anime website, official Toei Animation 2004 Saint Seiya anime website, official Toei Animation Seiya SP anime website, Saint Seiya at Anime News Network's Encyclopedia, Saint Seiya at Anime News Network's Encyclopedia, Saint Seiya at the Internet Movie Database.